Hello, everyone. It's your show, the New Nigerian Podcast, bringing to you the very first part two on the platform. It's a privilege to welcome Richard George of Richard George Foundation back to the platform. The first conversation we had was in 2020
Wow.
during COVID.
Wow.
It was very interesting. I recommend everyone should visit the New Nigerian website to listen to the podcast. It was very educative, very enlightening. And we're doing a follow-up part two, just to emphasize and show the progress that has taken place between the last podcast and now. Richie George is a graduate of the then Bendel State University. He also studied at the Birkbeck University of London, studied at the Thames Valley University as well. So he's very adept, very well educated. And with that, I'll extend the floor to Richard George just to tell us a bit about himself and his background. Thank you very much, Richie. The floor is extended to you.
No, thank you so much, David, for the wonderful job you and your team are doing at the New Nigerian. Thank you once again for your warm welcome and invitation to feature on your platform. It is not an opportunity or a privilege I take for granted, and we are very grateful for that, because you're doing an incredible job giving voice to Nigerians in the diaspora, or to be quite candid, Africans in the diaspora.
Thank you.
Yes, a little bit about my background. I think to be quite honest, I am not entirely sure what else I could have added or I can add to what you've already said, other than to say yes, you're right, I am a trained management consultant by qualification from the University of London here in Birkbeck, and I've got quite a few other qualifications behind me. My passion from something I never picked up initially was going through education, getting a job, doing your thing, and he's now transitioned into a visible passion for young and talented African graduates in Africa. How to open up channels of opportunities, be it in the realms of skills acquisition and development in today's digital world, be it in the realm of continuous learning and education that is relevant to make social change and impact, or be it in the area of identifying special talents in order to create that opportunity for startups of business or entrepreneurship pivot as to just people who are pursuing jobs, employment, which often than not, as you probably know, we'll probably talk about that later on, leads more often than not to nowhere. So that's me in a nutshell, and I suppose that's why we are here in terms of the journey and the progress we have made so far, so to speak. So again, I say thank you, and I am excited. Thank you.
Excellent. Great overview. But here at the New Nigerian, we want the audience to know you even deeper. So we want you to please tell us just a tiny bit about your childhood, the influences in your childhood, what guided you to where you find yourself now.
Oof, where do I start? Oh dear. David, you've put me on the spot there. I would say I think my mother has been the biggest influence in my life. Because of the sacrifices she made, the investment she made, and I could have derailed. So she's been the biggest influence in my life. But I think there's something that resonates with me in terms of why am I traveling on this journey? As a point of reflection, I was perhaps 1 week or 48 hours away from not graduating at university in Bendel State. because we had suffered my mom suffered a lot of financial losses, and it was terrible. She had two big stalls. For those who come from Nigeria who are watching your program, more importantly, those who come from the old Bendel state, she had two big market stalls, one at New Benin Market, and I won at, I'm not quite sure what that market was called. I think it was on Second is Secular, sandwiched between Second is Secular and Third is Secular. There was a market there at that time, whether it's a Kiosa market or something.
Yes, you're
Yes,
absolutely
great.
right.
So she had two back-to-back incidents, and the fire incidents finished her stalls.
Oh
So
dear.
we were absolutely grounded down financially. So she could no longer sponsor the latter part of my education. 24 hours before submission, a friend of mine introduced me to Honorable Ruben Ungbodi. Thank God he's still alive, and he's very active in politics in Delta State, as well as runs his own private practice. And I think it's Lagos and Port Harcourt. He had a publishing company. He was the one that rescued me. He rescued me by way of opening up his printing press to publish my dissertation materials. And we worked round the clock all night to be able to produce my project work and submit. And I remember submitting it to my then head of department and supervisor. I will call his name, Dr. Onoche. And he took my product or my project work. It was wet and damp. And he said, but if I open up these pages, it will all fall off. So if this is what you have written in your manuscripts, then I will go with the manuscripts. So that was how that happened. With that emotional state I was in, and that whole stress, I made a promise that if I ever have the opportunity, I want to invest and give back to young and talented African graduates in whatever way I can, be it finance if I have it, or skills or talent I would have acquired over time, so that way I am passing something on in appreciation and as a gratitude to God, to my mother, and importantly to Honorable Ruben Ungbodi, who was there at a critical time of need.
There you have it, audience. A very emotional part of Richard George's life, revealed to you without him telling us, we never would have known. This influenced, impacted on him, made him realize that he would want to give back to our society, a great country like Nigeria. Leads me to our first podcast. In our first podcast, we talked a bit about grassroots politics. We talked about education. I will never forget a quote you made, which had to do with the people in society articulating their grievances through, how did you put it now? You put it through cultural creativity,
Yeah.
using ironies and parodies. You asked a very important question then. Who is listening? Richie George, tell us, between then and now, has anybody listened? Has there been a progress in grassroots politics? Has there been progress within the educational sector in Nigeria?
Ooh, your questions are deep, sensitive, and insightful. Um, I think it was Aristotle that talked about the fact that by our very nature, we are all politicians. In other words, we have it in us because even in your privacy, in the privacy of your home, you are a politician of sorts because you make decisions, and that decision is informed by a lot of variables. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. So yes, let's start with your first question. Has anything changed? I think my response will be very rhetorical if you don't mind, and if your audience don't mind. I think it is a question that perhaps, without being disingenuous to it, it is for every Nigerian or every citizen in the developed world or developing world, so to speak, actually even so in the developed world, to have a right to ask themselves, what's changed? What's changed in terms of politics, as politics should be, and what's changed in terms of governance that should be the positive fruit of real politics that is human-centered, that focuses on values, values as it affects the community, values as it shapes the dynamics of society, values that shows the trajectory of living standards, inequalities, and a host of other variables by which you measure social progress being in place. So everyone has a legitimate right to look at those lenses from their own perspective. But as a collective that society is, and for society to function, it has to be inclusive in terms of its agenda and in terms of its derivable benefits. I asked the question, has anything really changed? I'm not sure I am gifted enough to have an answer to that question. So let me just pose it there. Let those who are better educated, quite or better informed than I am, if you don't mind, David, let them watch the podcast. Let them go into their little corners, into their little social networks or gatherings to pose the same question, and let us use a temperature gauge, not emotional, real calibrated performance metrics to determine if there's been any change since the last time we spoke.
So
yeah, okay,
go on,
I'm sorry.
go on. Yeah,
Your
no, go
second
on.
question touched on education. And education is very central to what we are doing in our foundation because we consider it the most fundamental requirement for human existence after the acknowledgement of God. It's fact. It's a fact I believe in. It's a fact we believe in. And it is cheap. What people don't realize is actually education really is cheap. But in terms of education in Nigeria, the way it is it cheap? Is it accessible? Is it affordable? What is the level of investment? When you look at the budget, national budget, and even at state level budget, what is committed to education? And when you look at on paper, it looks wonderful. My question is it felt at the points of need? Does it really translate into actionable, deliverable goals, such as it should? And is the budget in line with what the UNESCO benchmark of minimum of anything between 6 to 15% mandates most developing countries to vote in as for funding education? I don't know, but I think one is in denial if one says doesn't know. We can explore that a little bit more when we look at the quality of our products, the quality of our infrastructure, the teaching to student ratio, the output of programs, the quality of research, as well as the overall value system and the culture and systems that our education has thrown up as a way by which we now live and measure success in our African society.
Absolutely, Richie. I completely agree with you. Let me throw in my point of view with regards to have things changed? Who is listening?
Yeah.
The new Nigerian platform was developed during the COVID period. And the main aim was one, to bridge the gap between diaspora and Nigeria. We introduced a concept called the reverse brain drain, which was to get the best brains in diaspora working with the best brains in Nigeria and exporting all the knowledge from the developed world to Nigeria. Now, in that period, between 2020 and today, the new Nigerian has made progress. We will talk about that later.
Yeah.
The political climate in our country has been tense. It's recently thrown up a lot of dynamics. No one expected the emergence of Peter Obi.
It's true.
It has made the population be more aware of politics and where their loyalties should lie, either to their own benefits or to the benefit of the country.
Yeah.
The contesting candidates are at this point articulating what they have in store for the country. Every voter will make up their mind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the diaspora Nigerian is ineligible to vote. Hopefully, in the next dispensation, which is 2027, is not too far.
Yeah.
We would have been able to get the diasporan vote, which will make a major impact in the way politics is run in our country. With regards to education, it is no lie that even the average Nigerian is fantastic in education. We have the Nigerian in the hospitals all over the world. We have probably the best lawyers.
Yeah.
We have probably the best innovative kind of people. With the emergence of COVID, online platforming became the major source of inspiration and support. We have comedians all over Facebook and TikTok making money, making impacts in their little spheres, but as usual, always operating in silos. What we need, in my personal opinion, again, is for people to come together.
Yeah.
In a collective, there is lots of strength and power. It leads to my next topic with you, which we discussed when we had the first podcast. Obviously, at that time, you had a great friend of mine, Solomon Aleto.
Yeah.
A very good friend,
Fantastic guy. Yeah.
Your conversation was really interesting.
Thank you.
He talked about, you guys talked about the innovations then, which included collaboration with a company in, I think, Asia.
Yes.
With regards to COVID, COVID materials.
Yes.
You talked about your invention, which we would have expected by now to at least be in various churches or mosques in Nigeria.
Yeah.
How has that progressed? What's happened since then? Can you give us a bit of information?
Well, I think it was well documented. What didn't happen based on what we thought should happen, given the diaspora experience, is or was some contributed to some of the angst, some of the frustrations, the total helplessness and hopelessness that resulted in the famous Sorosuke protestations across the land, of which you and I were witnesses. And what we saw as a consequence of that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness was quite evident before our eyes, where in every areas where the indigenous young men and women attacked warehouses, storehouses, palaces, government buildings, we saw heaps of palliatives rotting away, and yet majority of the citizenry who needed these palliatives were hungry, were desperate, and were not having access. It was well documented as well in the press, media also, how some so-called big politicians were actually converting these donated palliatives and repackaging it with their branding, their logo, or their business names, and reselling them to the public. That is the level of moral bankruptcy and lack of empathy that some of our leaders displayed, and they were caught red-handed, and people started talking about sorrow. Soke, speak out loud. For the first time, non-violent protestations that showed where we were as a people, which of course was hijacked, one could argue, and it became violent in certain realm and gave certain people or persons in office the opportunity to use force of arms and weaponry, or including mobilization of the military, who should protect external borders where there are threats, now force them, influence or coerce them to use bullets and guns on its own young men and women who are viral, productive people that should contribute to the workforce and thus contribute to our gross domestic product. As we speak, you and I are aware of the outcome of the investigative report and the panel that was set up to investigate what happened at that Lekki on that fateful day. Once the truth came out, it has over time been redacted. It has over time been submerged. It has over time been bought. But history was made. And it was, in my opinion, to a great extent, a game changer that most people never thought it was. But that game changer, it is what perhaps is playing out today, where you're having a candidate like Peter Obi, candidate like the gentleman you brought here, Kachiku, if my memory serves me right, who also is from another political party, and the candidacy of someone like Showore, who has always been very vocal in the political arena. Like you said, you have a demographics within our population that represent 30 to 35% of the population numbers we have, who are now actively engaged in political conversations and contributing to how society should function. What one must say with a caveat is, at this point in time, it is still lots of conversations and a lot of talk. The measure of how far we have come, or the success of the road of travel, will be tested in the polling booths and will be tested when the results are truly announced. And then don't get me wrong. As long as it is a fair and credible election, and there are no underhand, there are no tactics, even though when you read some of the social media postings that go out, how certain ethnic groups classify them as minority or from one part of the region are being disenfranchised and not given access to their PVCs, then you begin to worry. You begin to worry about, will it be or will it not be? So that, I am afraid, summarizes our political state of being, or state of impasse, or state of paralysis, or crossroads, whichever way you want to describe it. But we're hopeful, and we have to remain hopeful. where we have to remain positive, and that is why some of us are saying we are not cut out as politicians. However, do we really, or do I really need to be a politician to add value or create change or amplify and transfer what is within my gift to transfer? And the answer for Richard George is no. I do not need to be a politician. Let me do what I can within what I am able to mobilize in the spirit of one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time, one local community or environment or government at a time, by way of making change happen. If we successfully achieve that alone, then one can heave and breathe a sigh of relief that I came, I did my part, and I did not just criticize, because talk is cheap.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Richie. Thank you very much. That was deep. That was impactful. Anybody who listens to that will have gained a little value. In essence, over the period between our first meeting podcast and this podcast, there's been a slight change in awareness within the political realm. It means the country is ticking towards positivity. The outcome of which eventually will be made known. Nothing is hidden under the sun. Now, if you remember, when we sat down with you, you were just at the periphery of what you are doing right now, what you've exported from diaspora, what you had in mind for the Nigerian polity. This brings me to the Richard George Foundation. Please, Richard, can you enlighten the audience about the Richard George Foundation, how the idea started, where you are now, and where we are going to go?
Fantastic. No, thank you so much. Our vision as a foundation, let me reiterate it, is to raise Africa's change makers by focusing on the mentoring of young and talented African graduates. And our organization is built on 3 strategic pillars. 1, skills acquisition and development in terms of relevant skills of today that can be exported internationally and that is in short supply in order to make our young talents in Africa competitive with their peers in the developed world. Second, continuous learning and education, because like I said previously, education is the fundamental of every human existence, and it's second to God. You educate a people, you educate a nation, and society makes progress. So we are very much into educating our people, but not the education that is just reading, writing, and arithmetics. It is education that informs the individual and prepares the individual as a totality or holistics to ensure and makes them feel valued and a valuable member of society and contributing to the needles of change in whatever area they find themselves or are privileged to be part of. And then last but not the least, entrepreneurship investment and supporting business startups and young talented graduates of Africa who have a propensity and can demonstrate a nuance and the capacity to start up their own business. Let's see what we can do to support them. Obviously, there are quite a number of metrics behind that that informs that that is something we need to do and how we can provide that. However little the investment is, or where we can't, how we can bring in what we call angelic investors on board to come and listen to what these people or young talents have in terms of ideas, in terms of concepts, and how they can transition those concepts into actual business endeavors with a capacity to scale and create employment of up to 5 persons, showing the rigors of business performance, transparency, and everything that is required under the CAC guidelines. So those are our 3 strategic pillars that we are focusing on. But the thread that connects those 3 pillars together is our mentoring program. Young talents have energy, perhaps they may not have focus. They have ideas, they need experienced, successful professionals, both in terms of career pathway or in terms of business startup, to provide that satellite navigation based on their own experiences in order to lessen or reduce the pitfalls on the road to achieving or actualizing that success by way of diminishing the possibilities of hopelessness and helplessness. So that's what our foundation is about. Of course, if our cohort or demographic group is situated in Africa, which it is, then we need to find a vehicle for doing or delivering the program. And that is how COVID became a blessing in disguise. Our mentoring program is a virtual mentoring program. But we just didn't want to bring people together on a virtual platform, have a chat, and go away. It will not work. So we reflected, we looked at our resources, we looked at our capabilities, we looked at our systems and processes and realized we did not have the capacity to deliver a mentoring program such as we were envisioning. As a consequence, we then signed up a supplier development partnership with a consulting company in the UK called Pushfar, whose only focus is creating mentoring programs and platform. And we signed up with them to give minimum 700,000 mentors access to our mentees, or vice versa, to give our mentees, of which we have 65 in our first cohort program, access to global mentors across all sectors of industry globally. An ecosystem that is safe and convenient, because the system is, you can engage via mobile technology, you can engage on desktop or laptop. It's convenient, it's at your own pace, but also the system has robust inbuilt artificial intelligence and algorithms that allows you to be able to set clear, smart goals, goals that are specific, achievable, realistic, time-bound, and can stretch the individual. Obviously, that is informed as part of the conversation between the mentor and the mentee. So they go away, and everything that is put takes place within that safe environment, and they all translate into calibrated metrics that informs us of success, the levels of engagement, the levels of knowledge sharing, the levels of interaction, where there are pain points or pinch points, and then we as an organization will come in order to smooth that out. So far, so good. We have the metrics that tells us what we need to continue to work through to improve upon. And I must say, our mentees have done an incredible job, but you have to consider the fact that to create inclusiveness, there are variations or variability in terms of skills level, capability and intuitiveness in relating to what is a new way of doing stuff. And they are shocked to see that that now becomes part of learning, using digital collaborative tools and platforms to engage and achieve personal and professional goals. So that's our mentoring program. But we are also conscious of the fact that to wholly depend on mentoring using a virtual program will not be enough. And that is why occasionally we host webinars. And we have one which a development partner, one of the best-selling authors in Malaysia, on the 27th, has agreed to run a business communication session for the Richard George Foundation mentees, free of charge, on a program he runs for organizations and individuals that normally is costed at $600 per attendee.
This is the 27th of January 2023.
Absolutely, which it will be 2 Fridays away. The flyers will be out tonight and we will begin to share them across our platform. So we are bringing international, you see, in Nigeria, recently I was reading something, they use the term Jakpa. Jakpa apparently is everybody leaving Nigeria. No, everybody cannot leave Africa. Everybody should not leave Africa, but because there's not a lot happening in the developed world anymore. But importantly, I am a firm believer that, like you rightly said when you started, it's time to give back and it's time to find a way to reinvest or reverse the brain drain. I think that was your word.
Yes.
And to reverse the brain drain, our foundation is now bringing these same persons internationally to invest free of charge in our talented people in Africa. We have signed up memorandum of understanding with some development partners, one of which is the 4-star hotel in Abuja, Well Scouting Hotel in Abuja. And it is, our memorandum is for them to facilitate internship opportunities for our mentees, so that when or during the period of 6-month mentoring, they have a work environment. Those who are interested in that environment, they have a work environment where they can transfer their learning, where they can transfer the knowledge, where they can transfer the skills in order to test it in a practical work environment that therefore enriches their CV. It gives them opportunity to demonstrate that they've been in active work environment, they've undergone some mentorship, and they've acquired the relevant behaviors that shows discipline and responsibility and accountability that most organizations, including the public sector, is in desperate short supply of, so that our young men and women are ready for the world of work. So what we're doing is holistic in terms of impartation of knowledge. And someone described it as being pastoral without the religious connotation. It's about looking at the social, psychological, economic, and physiological well-being of the individual so that they feel confident in embracing the new learnings, honing the skills, and the confidence to also express themselves in a manner that otherwise they would not be able to in an environment like Africa, where you and I know there are culture and systems in the way we do stuff often enough that frowns at a woman that speaks publicly. So it's very paternalistic society that does not give voice to the young, because we look more to age. Yes, reverence should be given to age, but we do not respect insights from a younger person, because in the local parlance, shut up, don't you know your mate, kind of. So these are some of the systemic bottlenecks, if I may put it that way, cultural bottlenecks, if I may put it that way, social stigmas, if I may put it that way, that our foundation is trying to share or open up through intentional questions that helps them begin to think systemically about what they are doing. And we're challenging them by giving them tasks. Let me give you a very small example. The program of the 27th, with an international global speaker who is #1 Amazon sales leader in Malaysia, was organized and is being packaged by a Richard George Foundation mentee who only started their mentoring journey 2.5 months ago.
Wow.
2.5 months ago. When I told her that the flyer for adverts, she would be on the flyer, she begged me endlessly that no, that she wants to just come and participate. She is just putting it together. And I said, that is our organization to give back to you, because we want to give you the platform to showcase your talent. That's what our vision is: raising Africa's change makers, recognizing talent, recognizing skills, and creating platforms for them to be able to compete with their Western counterparts and have the confidence to ask questions indicative of curiosity.
Wow.
As part of what we are doing, we are quite fortunate now. We have signed up with one of India's fastest growing cybersecurity organization called RAM Antivirus, based in the western state of North Maharashtra in India, who are committed to providing internship, project, and work experience remotely for our mentees who have a propensity or interest in the world of cybersecurity, so they can learn the detection, analysis, and the laboratory condition and assessment and the rigors that these viruses, malwares, and others are subjected to, and how they come about with products and programs that attacks these viruses to ensure individual assets and organizational assets or infrastructure that are digitalized are kept safe at all times. We have also signed up with one or two other organizations, and we are waiting for a confirmation of feedback from one of the UK's largest immigration advisory service organization that is going through our request to be a development partner. And the whole idea is to open that platform up for purpose of remote internship for mentees who are lawyers within our program or within Richard George Foundation, and to give them that remote exposure to how legal practice is conducted against best international standards, so that you can never tell which client wants a case that is being handled internationally and what insights they want to have from the Nigerian angle. But importantly, it broadens their mind and it exposes them. Our mentoring platform supplied has on the open network 700,000 mentors globally. Our mentees, therefore, by default, have access to 700,000 credible people that they may well never have had access to across the globe. And therefore, you in a safe environment, there are people you can reach out to grow your social network, to grow your professional network, and to help you shape your career to quality conversations, as well as give you signposts or point you into areas where you can have resources. Similarly, our mentoring platform has an ecosystem or an eco-library filled with tons of resources, research materials, videos, and podcasts that provides that continuous education I talked about, that continuous learning that is free of charge because the foundation is making that investment for and behalf of our young men and women. In terms of entrepreneurship, we are now working or looking towards launching the foundation first virtually in March here in the United Kingdom. It will be a virtual where we will invite family and friends, and we will be making what you will argue will now be a public announcement of the foundation. But the last week in September, coinciding with the Independence 2023, 50, is that 63rd independence of Nigeria? Or yes, that would be the 63rd, is that right? Or 53rd?
No,
Anyway,
63rd.
exactly.
63rd.
I thought so. So the 63rd independence anniversary, we want to formally launch our foundation. It will be preceded by a boot camp, and we are now engaging with global international organizations and people who will help facilitate that 1 week of a program of education, skill building, as well as other variables that we will share with the community, and then formally launch it on that Saturday, September 30th, with lots of people invited to come and attend. And then we will now also use the opportunity to open up, God willing, the Richard George Foundation 20 Incubation Hub. The ROGF 20 Incubation Hub will serve the purpose of a hub in collaboration with Bakehouse in Abuja, who are giving us the space to use, will serve the purpose of a one-size-fits-all environment where we will, through rigors of a selection process, identify 20 across the land space of Nigeria, talented, ideas-driven young graduates who will go through a very bespoke program over 6 to 8 months. And at the end of that, those who are able to move their ideas needle under supervision, under coaching, under development, under support, under exposure to virtual training program, face-to-face workshops or whatever, and come up with sound business plans and proposals that demonstrates A, scalability value, B, return on investment prospects, C, employability in terms of showing that they can hire up to 5 young men and women. Our foundation will do absolutely all it can to see how we can raise funds to contribute towards the startup of those ventures. And the whole principle across everything we're saying is A, people begin to get high jobs, paid jobs, that translates into economic well-being, financial independence, and therefore they can contribute to society in terms of the progress. B, less reliance on government jobs, where we have bottlenecks, where we have godfatherism or who you know. Rather, we are now looking for people who have real talent, because our values and our principles for public life, such as we serve, is based on 7 principles of honesty, integrity, objectivity, selflessness, leadership, such that an accountability. You cannot say we are not fair, open, and transparent. These are the unique features that we want to ensure we put in place. It's what I have as a gift. If you come to me for money, I haven't got money. But I have now recognized that there are certain giftings that the good Lord has placed in my hands. Myself and the people around me who believe in the vision, we want to do our best to make a difference. Remember, one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time. If at the end of our journey, whatever that may be, we are able to make a significant change in the lives of only one, I think we would have achieved success.
You're so right.
Yes, just to finish off, we have recently signed an MOU with another international organization called the Kinenye Initiative National Development, based in Sierra Leone, and we are onboarding them on Thursday, the 19th of January. They have asked us to help onboard 20 of their young talented graduates in Sierra Leone onto our platform, so we can collaborate and begin to grow the vision of our foundation.
Richard George, this is impressive. All this within the last 3 years.
Yes.
Is proof of the reverse brain drain.
We
It's
have to.
Proof that diaspora can have a major impact on Nigeria. Now, the Nigerians shouldn't get it wrong. We have immense talent in our country, capable of similar things. So what we advise is for the populace to join hands with diaspora in making more realities, in improving our lot. It's time, like Richard said, to leave the government sector, to come into the private mentoring sector. My audience, I will ask Richard to give you information on how to register, where to register, what to do for registration, how to contribute your own part towards the development of the Richard George Foundation and diaspora. It's a chance again to be collaborative. So I'll open the floor to Richard again to give you the information of how to connect.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Firstly, they can visit our website, www.richardgeorgefoundation.com. All the information and perhaps everything I've spoken about it regarding our foundation is well detailed on our website, and our banking details for those who are led to want to donate and they believe in what we're doing. All our banking details are there for them to do so. And in the spirit of openness, we don't only recognize donors, we also acknowledge donors officially, and we make it absolutely very visible as part of our reporting system when we come to do our end of year account. But perhaps the question to ask, like you rightly said, is why do we want people to donate to us? Why do we want anyone to want to be part of what we're doing? So first, we need mentors. Our young men and women of talent do not have real role models that helps them shape how society should function, how society should be inclusive, and how society should transition for the benefit of all. It's in short supply. So we need mentors who are fed up with the status quo, who believe they have the principles, the moral values that will inform and support talent in the right way. To come on board and be mentors, our advert is up. Again, visit richardgeorgefoundation.com, where you can absolutely put in minimalist details. So we have that information and we will look at it and we will respond back to you more than likely positively, and training will be provided for all mentors by our supplier partner here in the UK on a virtual platform. No more than 1 hour to show our mentors how to use the system, maximize the value of using that system, both for themselves, their personal and professional growth, as well as for the mentees. But importantly, there is a derivable benefit such that all programs that we run, all our mentors will be invited to attend free of charge, and also our mentors will have access to 700,000 other mentors. In other words, if you are in business or you have a professional career, there is nothing to suggest that you will not bump into someone from the United States of America or Malaysia or India or China that you could connect with in order to grow your business, your social relationship, or the values that you can share in order to promote each other and become what you want to be. So that's the first one. But Why are we doing what we are doing? Let me give you some shocking statistics that you are aware of. The African Union Lessons Learned and Key Systemic Bottlenecks Framework that was created in this 2021, which is 2 years ago, by the African Union Congress Chairperson Special Initiative, identified the following bottlenecks, which speaks to the heart of what we're doing. One, our young graduates who are coming out of various institutions of higher learning are coming out. There is a mismatch of workforce qualification and labor market needs. People are going through education for the sake of it. There is not enough data or statistics made available through research by universities and higher institutions of learning in Africa as to what the job market truly demands. But I get the thinking behind that, because universities will only survive by numbers. So there is a little bit of fall in ethics and morality in that regards. There are limited internships and entry-level job opportunities. So what you often find is employers in Africa, and even here in the developed world it happens, but less so, they're looking for people who have 5-year qualifications. But if a graduate graduates this year and they've not had the opportunity of internship, whatever it may be, subscribed to by different organizations, more so the private sector, where is the experience in terms of job experience that can be reflected on CV to teleport or transfer into real world of work at a time of application? Limited information on job opportunities, because you and I know that in Africa, before the jobs are advertised, I have told my family and friends already. So when it's advertised, it is just purely tokenistic and just to show that we are doing something out in the public. So there is a lot of change that's needed. Limited young persons' participation in leadership and governance across the social across these different spectrums of society. Absence of effective youth forums addressing youth issues. When was the last time we had some kind of gathering where young people are allowed to say, what are your issues, and who is creating a framework that is inclusive, that takes on board their pain points and works with them by way of inclusivity to solutionize their problems, and then look for how government or private sector can fund those pain points and make life a little bit more bearable. There is limited voice at national, regional, and global levels of the young talents in Africa. Simply because of what you said earlier on, David, although you didn't say it openly, you talked about the political landscape. It is still filled with people who should long have retired. Long have retired. But you only retire well and sleep with your eyes shut when you have created a pipeline of effective succession planning. And to have effective succession planning, you give voice to the younger ones so that they can show you what their world is. 5 years ago, you and I would have had to lock ourselves in a room and have this quality podcast. Today, we are doing it on a virtual platform. There has been strikes in the United Kingdom by various organizations and sectors. But if you look at the GDP output, if you look at the productive capacity, the needle has not dropped, because COVID was a game changer. People are now working from home. Productivity level perhaps has even increased because I don't have to work my regular 9 to 5. If I'm tired during the daytime, I run my stuff, I run my own personal chores, and then I freshen myself up and I go for night and I complete all my tasks. Who is giving voice? Who is giving voice to our people in terms of innovation, in terms of creativity, and in terms of inclusiveness? Lack of infrastructure or access to infrastructure. We will talk about that when I say what are the challenges of Richard George, for which I am asking you to please join us, contribute whatever. Every penny counts. Insufficient number of I talked about ratio of lecturers to student population in Nigeria. ASU was on strike for a long time. I know about 5 lecturers who left Nigeria. So who is left behind? Who are the quality academicians who are teaching these people? And even if there are, what is the ratio of teacher or tutor to student, which, by the way, is a global metric in the Global Universities Index for measuring the quality of education. You have to have that balance right. Limited alternative cost of education, cost-effective tertiary education opportunities. Today, we're talking about hybrid. Our mentoring is providing some sort of education where our young men and women are being taught about virtual skills, putting it into practice, learning how to utilize it to set goals, and they can track those goals off their own back by a process of self-learning, self-development, and gaining confidence and being competitive with their peers in the developed world. Unthinkable, but they have challenges. Limited access to capital investment in young entrepreneurs. Who trust them? If you go to Africa and you want to borrow money to, even if you have the soundest business invention or idea and you want money, due to the regulatory framework and the internal policies of most institutions that are set up even by government to fund those, they don't listen to young people and they're asking you to go and bring collaterals. Where will you find a collateral to bring? But we understand there are some key factors that could be driving that. But the NIN should have a way of reducing or eliminating some of those issues, inclusive of BVNs, because the BVN tracks where you are and who you are. And lack of, look, the AU, African Union, Chairperson Initiative 2021 report says lack of mentorship and incubation opportunities to young entrepreneurs. In other words, Richard George, is for a time and a season such as this.
Fantastic.
Limited access to market information and business growth and opportunities, as barriers to establishing small, medium enterprises, including what I considered to be regulations. So what am I asking for? Why do we want support? Our mentees need laptops to engage. Our mentees need support with internet connectivity and data costs. Our foundation needs resources or the capacity to be able to, wherever our mentees are, but more importantly, for our incubation hub to have regular power supply so that when our young people congregate and we are pushing out information, business skills, business intelligence, and our international partners are supporting their growth, we do not have epileptic supply of power. The general economic conditions of Africa is harsh. Occasionally, we want to be able to support our mentees with transport costs to whatever location we are having a collective one-stop program. And also, we want to be able to have the power to promote our mentoring program using a lot of platforms that provide or that charges sums of money that we cannot entirely rely on the internal resources because we are a private, not-for-profit organization. So every penny that comes, as you can see, is geared towards being invested back into the foundation so that the foundation can support our mentees in achieving the vision that we have set for ourselves.
Wow. Richard George, thank you so much. You know, we could go on for ages, but it's an hour already. Um, I just want the audience to know a few things. One, there's a platform ready available 2, the New Nigerian is happy to be associated with the Richard George Foundation,
Wow.
and we will enable our own support by visiting the website and making our own contribution.
Thank you.
Nothing is too little.
Yeah.
Every little helps. We know that slogan.
Yeah.
Audience, it's been 1 hour. If you listen to the first podcast, which was done in 2020, and listen to this podcast, you will realize so much progress has been made in reversing the brain drain, in creating something out of diaspora, which is starting to work in Nigeria and Africa, which will go even better.
Thank you.
Hopefully within the next year or two, when we meet again, it will be another progress report. I want to use this opportunity to thank you, Richard George,
Thank you.
for allowing us an insight into what you're doing,
Thank you.
making the audience understand that there is hope yet.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That is very important.
Absolutely.
And we hope that in the near future, we will be able to meet again to
Yes.
give another progress report.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for your time. And at this stage, or at this point, I would like to say a big thank you and allow you just one more word, especially to diaspora. Please let diaspora know how they should support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I can't thank you enough, and thank you for aligning with our vision. I think it would not be remiss of me to say we all as diasporans have had diverse experiences of our relationship with fatherland, be it in Nigeria or Africa. Expectations that have fallen well short in terms of maybe investments, and some people experience being swindled out of it, some people experience being duped, loss of capital, and I can go on and on, not having faith in the system. I accept that. That's the reality. That's their experience. But all I would say is you and I must rise above those failures. You and I can still make a difference. You and I carry something that is unique. What do you carry? What is your legacy? Work with us. If you cannot do anything in Nigeria, at least support us so that we can continue to give you a progress report of how we are changing the lives of our young and talented graduates, one person at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time, one society at a time, and making change visible for the betterment of the individuals, the community, and the wider society, so that our young men and women will look more internally and see how they can compete with their peers in the West. And we are opening up those opportunities because not everyone can come into the West. So what they cannot come, we are taking it to them, because if you cannot go proverbially to the mountain, then let the mountain come to you. I so conclude.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Governmental agencies within Nigeria.
Yeah.
Here is an opportunity to also partner with the Richard George Foundation. Together, we are stronger.
Absolutely.
Collectively, we will win. I leave you all now, and thank you for listening. I hope you've gathered value. I hope you've gained a lot of knowledge. Knowledge is free, and I'm happy that we've been productive for the last hour. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you again. Bye for now.